everyone. Welcome to another Africa Hospitality Investment Forum or AHIF podcast, the podcast that looks to shed the light on everything investment related into the African continent. Today, here I have a wonderful return podcast with the wonderful Rahul Chaudhary, the MD and CEO of CG Corp Global and CG Hospitality Holdings. Welcome, Rahul.
Thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure to be here. Always.
Well, this is quite an interesting one because the last time we spoke was just after the world woke up again 2 years ago, post COVID. Um, and actually, I reviewed it. Everyone's very welcome to go back and have a look at that podcast as well. But we're talking a sort of 2 year gap now, and I think this will serve as a bit of a catch up on what we discussed there, but also maybe it's surprised us in some ways as to where things have gone. So it'd be really nice to sort of see, test my listening skills from before. And the first thing that really caught me from our conversation before was the sheer scale of CG, CG Global, and you mentioned you had 15,000 family members or a workforce of 15,000. Has that got bigger over the last couple of years? Have you found yourself expanding? Tell us a little bit more about where the business is from where it was 2 years ago.
Sure. Now, first of all, thank you again, Matt, for giving me this opportunity today. Always been a big fan of Matt and of bench events,
Thank you.
and I'm glad to be here as well. So, the past 2 years have been very, very interesting, and for the group as well. And the group has certainly grown over the past 2 years, having made uh, inroads into investments in Nepal. We recently also acquired a large bank in Sri Lanka. The group already owns the largest bank in the private sector in Nepal. And we had also, actually, over the past 2 years, bought one of the top four privately held banks in Nepal. So we merged that and we bought another bank in Sri Lanka. It's a decently sized bank, but as always, our group strategy has been to focus on emerging and frontier markets, as I've always mentioned, and that's where we see the opportunities are high risk, high return, a lot of hard work to be put in because your entry obviously is not very easy, but your pricing is very attractive. But yeah, banking side, we are moving towards that direction. In terms of hotels, too, we've made some headway. I don't know where we were 2 years back, but happy to tell you
You
that
you
today.
told me you had 150 plus, I think. Has that grown much?
Yes, I mean, I think it was at 125 or 30.
Okay.
Anyway, it is now at 169
Wow.
today, and with close to 10,000 odd keys, and we've grown into 12 countries. We are adding almost. We are the second largest management company in India. Literally, we are opening one hotel every 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
So I would say that it's been an interesting journey, and India has seen a mammoth growth when it comes to hospitality. I mean, from a Africa point of view, while we are on that subject, Africa is a very, very important market for us, more so East Africa. I did mention to you in the last podcast that we bought two of the Fairmont hotels in Nairobi and Masai Mara from Kingdom Holdings. And, don't want to get into the history, but we've been in East Africa for over 10 years now. A lot of learning, a lot of interesting times, but looking at further expanding our footprint in East Africa in terms of the foods. vertical. That's one another big vertical, as I mentioned to you, where we
You had
manufacture
YY,
noodles.
YY noodles, if I remember right.
YY noodles, absolutely. So now we manufacture almost close to 3 billion packets noodle of a year, and that is close to 3%, 3 to 3.5 billion, and that's close to 3% of the global production and consumption. And why I say about noodles is because we are in the process of setting up a plant in Egypt. So it's that part of the world
Yeah,
of our discussion as well. So I see that we are growing our footprint. 2 years has been interesting. A lot of challenges in terms of liquidity crunch when you talk about from the financial sector. But we are where we are. I mean, we look at good investments and capitalize on those. So that's where we
it's
are.
amazing. And last time you told me you had 12 service lines. Um, Now, I can't remember all of them, but even FMCGs there and all sorts. Has that grown as well? Have you started to diversify in other service
We
lines?
are diversifying. Sorry to interrupt you, Mike.
That's
We
okay.
are diversifying within the current verticals itself. I mean, the verticals, we have not expanded more than the 12 verticals. I mean, just to name them, it's from your FMCG to
That's
education,
right.
banking, financial services, that is banking, insurance, finance, money remittance. Then we have hotels, real estate, telecom, cement, automobile.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's another big sector, by the way. We just stepped into automobile EV, more so EV in Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. With we tied up with a lot of Chinese automakers because the duty in Nepal and these neighboring countries is quite attractive for EV. I mean, if I tell you the duty for a normal vehicle, I mean, anyway, I'll tell you it's about 280 to 300%.
Wow.
So it's quite ridiculous when it comes to vehicles because we don't manufacture that here, right? So EV was quite attractive, and now we are growing. We've already signed, I believe, 4 brands in China, and we recently, happy to tell you, have just tied up with the largest manufacturer of two-wheel motorcycles in the world. It's an Indian brand called Hero, and so we are going to set up their manufacturing facility in Nepal because you have to understand that developing countries like ours, Nepal, and frontier and emerging markets that I just mentioned, there is a huge opportunity because of the middle class. And the middle class always aspires for more,
Mm,
you see, whereas the upper class already has that, if you know what I
yeah.
mean. So, and the middle class in these markets such as China, India,
Africa.
and these neighboring countries is the largest in the world. I mean, we could be sitting in a better position, Matt, than geographically because we have a population of 3 billion on two
Yeah.
sides. I mean, this is where the sheer opportunity is, and that's why we have spent actually the past 2 years consolidating, 2 years in terms of focusing and growing our existing footprint, growing our existing businesses, and more so, I would say, re looking and reimagining our current businesses and business models and structure. Because what was 2 years back, let's say during COVID, post COVID, is not what it
Mm,
is right now. Every single business has changed. The way one looks at business, the cost structures, the revenue structures, the business models, the growth structures, everything has evolved, and so has our entire way of
so,
thinking.
so this is quite a good segue into the hospitality sector then, because obviously you've grown massively, 40 odd new hotels. Have they? And actually, in some ways, you've always had a very diverse portfolio. You've never been sort of we're just luxury or, in Kenya, but you've got a good a stable of mid scale and budget. Um, Have you sort of leaned towards any other type of product? Has something sort of changed there? Has certain markets come to light that you didn't expect because of all of these sort of changes?
Well, I don't think we have moved on to a different segment in hospitality. As you are right, I mean, we are literally in every segment from budget to mid market to upper upscale, luxury, wellness.
Hmm.
So we are covering all the sectors already. But what we are doing, Matt, is that we are consolidating when it comes to our focus on brands, our focus on geography, and our focus has turned more towards raising capital to prepare ourselves for an IPO. You see, we worked so hard over the past 2, 3 decades to bring the company. I mean, if you really look at it from a company perspective, I mean, our company is still very young. We are just 2 decades young. I mean, when you look at other global brands and global hospitality groups, and I believe, with all sense of modesty and humility, having achieved 170 odd hotel in 2 years, I think is something to feel proud of for all our CG family members and team. But what we are doing is that we are focusing now, as I mentioned, one is on the growth, which is the fundraise, preparing for an IPO by bringing on an equity partner, a strategic equity partner, or an institutional investors to corporatize more so from the world perspective to prepare for an IPO in the future. This brings about a lot of systems, processes, let's say a name in the private equity space or the investment space, because as I mentioned, Matt, that we are a group that has no debt on our corporate balance sheet, by the way,
Mm.
and we have grown virtually on organically based on our own internal accruals. But you can only go so far when you talk about taking a company to where it is today. So we are planning towards those. Plus, I would say that we are also pursuing and completing some of our developments which went astray during COVID. Like, for example, we will have two hotels in Bhutan, in Paro and Phobjika, open in October. I mean, those we had to take a little bit of a pause and stop during the COVID because of obvious reasons. And similarly, now in Nepal, we are pursuing various developments. We are going to have almost 7 hotels by the next 2 years, 3 years. So we restarted those developments, and we have been focusing on growing our management company platform in India, which has served us pretty well. And one of the most important sectors, which I think I mentioned to you last time as well, Matt, is wellness. Wellness is going to be a big sector focus for us. Our product, the farm in at San Benito in Philippines, has done quite well. It's become a name to reckon with and quite well known in the hospitality and wellness circuit all over the world. I think it's a $3 trillion industry, and the future of luxury hospitality is wellness, because it literally addresses every aspect of a customer, every aspect of their physical well-being, their emotional well-being, plus something that they desire from a luxury platform and
Mm.
service. And all of that holistic, uh, let's say, offering can only come from a wellness resort. So that is a big sector for us, where we are now looking at 4 to 5 different countries to grow. And I would say that Africa could be one of them. Africa could be one of them where we would be looking at growth in that sector as well.
But let's look at Africa a little bit more detail here, and there's a couple of things I'll get to. Obviously, the last time we spoke, we mentioned that you had just bought the two iconic properties in Nairobi, the Norfolk and the Mara property. And then the day after you signed the deal, COVID kicked in, and obviously the recovery was starting to bounce back. How are they performing now? How's Nairobi looking for you, and your sort of feeling on the investment?
Sure. I mean, you know that Nairobi is a very hot and cold market, right? It's obviously prone to a lot of upside and downside, political risk. And we know about Kenya and its political challenges there, instability. I mean, a notion which is there quite common in any developing country, let's just say from that perspective. But we managed to, after we signed the two deals, Matt, I think I mentioned to you when we met the last time around that, we managed to restructure the investment from a cost perspective. So our basis was quite clean from a clean slate perspective, from a bottom up approach. So considering where we are today from where we took over, I would say that we are doing pretty well. And we have put in capital even during the most difficult times to upgrade some of the public areas in both the properties. The market is looking up with tourism coming in. So that's been pretty good for us from Kenya. And Mara is always evergreen. I mean, Mara started off just the next year after COVID itself. So Mara was never a market which really went down too much. But Nairobi, I would say, is picking up. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the gateway to East Africa, right? And it's always going to. It's like saying that you have a hotel in New York,
Mm.
and whether the hotel in New York is doing well or not, it goes through its cyclical challenges. But a hotel in New York will always do well because of the sheer market itself. But I think we are sitting in a good position, and the property continues to perform better. I mean, we are quite pleased with our operating partners, Accord. They're doing a good job by bringing in the necessary market from Europe and America coming in, because they are also expanding their footprint.
Yeah.
And that's very important from a hotel's growth. And we are one of the luxury brand in that market, which obviously helps us.
And last time you explained your strategy to be a hub and spoke one within the market. Obviously, we touched upon Rwanda not being the start of that, and that being a bit of a frustration. Has that sort of take? Firstly, obviously, do explain. If you feel the necessity to explain what that hub and spoke means, and but secondly, just now, how does that play out for you with the rest of Africa, with the sort of
Sure.
the Nairobi piece?
Sure. Whenever I'll just touch upon the hub and spoke model, what we typically do when we go into a region or a country is that we like to set up one investment in a key city in that region or that market or that country. And why we do that is because it's a new market for us. And we obviously step into new markets typically by way of a partnership, right? And we have wonderful partners in Kenya as well. And this gives us the opportunity to understand the market, the challenges, the geopolitical issues, the financing issues, dealing with authorities, dealing with consultants, contractors, the whole 9 yards. When you talk about a 360 of the market, so that by the time we have one property done and stable, we are confident that going into other market is going to be easy, because we create that team also around that property. So that's what we did with Kenya. I know that it was in 2020 March, so that's almost 4 years from back from here. But it's okay. We are not in a rush. A lot of learnings, like I said, right from 2013, 14, when we entered East Africa and its challenges. But of course, we became wiser. That's why we invested in Kenya right after, as soon as I got that opportunity. Now, having said that, I would say that East Africa is still our focus. I mean, we will still look at markets in East Africa, but I would say Tanzania is a good market for us. And some other markets that I would like to focus on, not only East Africa, But now I have little bit widened my horizon to look at Africa in terms of Mozambique.
Yeah.
I want to look at Ghana. I want to look at Namibia. All these markets which have the inherent growth prospects, yet have the ingredients of stability as well as hunger for investors and operators to come in. I mean, that's how it was when we actually came into East Africa
Yeah.
2013, Matt. And that was the reason why, I mean, a group from Nepal, you can imagine, is going into East Africa because we saw that I mean, things were, everyone was so welcoming, people wanted to partner with us. And by the way, those days, the Marriott footprint, Accor footprint, Starwood also at that point in time was quite limited.
Mm.
And we wanted to go into these markets with our own brand. I mean, of course, now the story is a little bit different. But having said that, I mean, the pie is very big, right? So we can always look at getting a share of the pie because our focus segment from our brand perspective is the mid market. But we are also open to looking at luxury products with third party operators as well. I mean, we are brand agnostic, not really focused on one brand
And
perspective.
the last time we spoke, you mentioned opportunities in the pipeline. You mentioned a few there: Mozambique, Ghana, but also Addis and Zambia. I think you mentioned as well.
Yes.
I mean, have they come to fruition? I mean, what's actually happened in the last 2 years that's shaping your
Yeah.
business?
So, like I said, Matt, you're absolutely right. 2 years back, we were literally on a growth spree to get more investments because what we were planning to do was that we were planning to invest into more properties, put it in a
That's
vehicle,
right. You
and
mentioned a
raise
fund.
more
Yeah.
capital in East Africa by way of a fund. But then we realized that first we should focus on the Kenya asset. So, no, we did not go ahead and invest into those opportunities. But I will tell you, I think wisdom prevailed, and I would say that I'm happy that we took that route and did not rush into many of these investments because the market, if you ask from a investment perspective, has become even more lucrative for buyers. I mean, there are so many properties that are available out there in these markets for sale
Mm.
for one reason or the other,
Is the
and
distressed market still quite strong? Yeah.
absolutely.
Still.
I mean, not as distressed as it used to be during
Yeah.
COVID,
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously, but still, Matt, that hospitality is not for the faint-hearted. I mean, just to put it very lightly, it's a very resilient sector, but it's for someone who has the ability to stay on, who has the ability to hang on, and it's a very capital intensive business when you talk from a investor perspective. I mean, with all due respect to the operators will come and operate, they take a percentage of the top and the bottom and they move on. They lose some, they gain
Yeah.
some, but from an investor perspective, there was also a time, I would say, and I say this in many forums, Matt, that you know the 2 decades, anyone who had excess cash or capital from other businesses wanted to be in the hotel industry. It was sort of a
Mm.
lifestyle or sort of
An
a,
ego
a statement to
instinct.
say, oh, you know what, I have a hotel,
Yeah.
and not really realizing the true risks and opportunities that come from the long-term gestation of an investment in a hotel. And then what would happen is that these investors would typically look at a quick return as they do with their other businesses. I mean, I'm one of them. I'm into so many different sectors as well, right? But I mean, a buyer and seller rarely will come to one platform to say, okay, we have a deal until unless one compromises. So it's so we did take a step back, we took a pause, but I believe now we are slowly gearing up to restart our journey. I'm not really worried about the investment opportunities, Matt. I'm really not
Still with the
worried at all.
intention
I
of
mean,
going down the fund route at the end of it. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we are as I mentioned, that the fund route now we are talking about our holdco as well, which is our CG Hospitality, where the entire 170 hotels sits. But we are also looking at regional IPOs and fundraising. For example, we are also looking at doing let's say, bringing in a strategic partner for our management company in India. Similarly, we want to do a strategy for our wellness business in Philippines. So similarly, we may want to do something in Nepal because we have a scale of 8, 9 hotels and even 2 more in Bhutan. We want to put it in the same structure. So look, there are a lot of moving wheels here, but the underlying strategy here is growth, raising capital, bringing in an institutional or a strategic investor, then looking at an IPO.
Okay.
That is pretty much, I have summed up the strategy for the next 3 to 5 years, I would say.
We'll catch up then as well, I'm sure. But is there anything in the hospitality sector that keeps you up at night with all of this? You talk about it being, not for the faint-hearted. Is there anything that sort of keeps you up at night with it all?
All the challenges, to be very honest with you. I mean, challenges keeps me up, but if you really ask me, I actually like challenges. And
I think you have to.
if we didn't have to deal with challenges, I would be sipping a pina colada with you somewhere in our resorts in
That
Maldives.
sounds fantastic.
But I barely get to do that. But the point is that obviously, the past 3, 4 years, we've spent a lot of time in restructuring and cleaning up. To just put it in a very brash term, cleaning up the mess, cleaning up all our investments and bringing it on track. And I believe that we are finally there now. And obviously, challenges come along the way, which you have to deal with, because when you are dealing with 12 different markets, it's dealing with
Yeah.
12 different worlds altogether, right? So the challenges, for example, I mean, the challenges of liquidity from a banking perspective hasn't really it's not over. But every market has a different challenges when you talk about dealing in the financial with the financial institution. So it's dealing with these challenges, but it's fine. I mean, we have brought it upon ourselves to be in these frontier and emerging markets. So it is going to come up with some challenges, but we are handling it. But if you ask me how it was, the sleepless nights 4 years and 2 years back, I think now it's a little bit
You're
better,
sleeping more
no doubt. And
comfortably
now
than
we are
you were
looking at better
then.
times.
So I asked that question because it leads on to talking about the Africa Hospitality Investment Forum, and we've got that coming up in a few months in Namibia, and can't wait to see that. I'm going to pick on one of the sessions, which I thought actually would come up as one of your sort of keeping you up at night points, which is government initiatives to support the hospitality industry. So, what would you say to African sort of governments about supporting FDI and supporting investors like you coming into the market?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, Matt. And I think this is a point that I actually touch upon in virtually every conference that I'm in Africa. And why I do that is because, you see, for international investors like us, okay, a system and a government is like the radar of a boat. Okay, we are good. We are coming into the ocean and we have only this pontoon or a boat with which we are trying to move across from one side to the other. It's them who have to guide us through these difficult waters in terms of reaching our objective. And while we may be able to find a partner ourselves, because let's say of our reputation or our global footprint, but a private investment or an international investor coming in will never be successful without the proper support of the authorities, of the governance, of the leadership, and also by giving the investors the right incentives and motives to want to come in there. I mean, while we are on the subject, that was the reason why we stepped into some of the investments that we did in East Africa, and we were quite let down at that point in time for whatever one reason or another. And but the way I really look at it, I mean, I look at it with a pinch of salt. We learned, and we are the wiser, and that's the reason why I think we are in East Africa still, and I think people do still know of us. Otherwise, we would have never gotten this opportunity to have invested here. So governance plays a very, very important role. I mean, especially for international investors like us. And if we don't, you have to understand that international investors are always very sensitive to governance. I mean, we can handle the market upside and downside. We can handle the ups and downs of the economy, which is always not in the control of governments. There are a lot of international factors that play a role in that. But those that can be controlled by the system needs to be supported by the system too. In the difficult times, it is you who has to give them the umbrella, and in the most valuable time, you will get that return by way of these investors who will be your ambassadors for life. That's the only way that any country is going to grow, and that's what we have done with Kenya, and that's what we have done with many countries around the world where we are. I mean, if you really ask me, I think that's another question you asked me last time about the ease of doing business in different countries. I mean, if you really ask me, these many countries that we are dealing with, I'll name it: Dubai, Bhutan. These are markets, even Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
These are markets which embrace us with arms wide open, and they're saying, whatever you want, it's the red carpet.
Yeah.
And that's why we are doing more and more and more. So as you mentioned, governance is something that needs to be given prominence, and I do strongly believe that all authorities and agencies that advocate the country's promotion of tourism and investment need to really put that in action rather than just words. Most of the time we hear it that, oh, come to our country, we will let you invest here, we will open the doors for you, we will do this for you, we will do that. I can tell you, Matt, and with all due respect to you guys, because you guys give them the platform, I've had multiple countries with whom they say, okay, tomorrow itself we will get you this, tomorrow itself we will get you that. We are interested, no problem. But tell me how to go about it. I mean, how are you going to bring us there and make us feel right at home? So that's something which is very critical, and I'm sure with your platform that is going to be a key topic which will be addressed, because any investor who's coming there is saying the same thing. When you talk about any country and it doing well,
Yeah.
you are literally praising the governance and the system. When you say there are challenges, you are telling the governance and system to wake up.
We'll try and get as many government figures there as possible, as usual, so that they can hear these wise words, because it's only going to help their countries. But any advice for, finally, because I know you've taken up a huge amount of your day today, so thank you for that, Rahul. Any advice for anyone who's considering perhaps coming to this event now, seeing this podcast now, and what would your sort of testimonial be on what they should get from AHIF?
Sure. I consider, first of all, Bench and AHIF a brilliant platform, because Africa is, if you really ask me, is one of the most upcoming and a region with a lot of opportunities, a lot of upside, and the one platform that brings the entire fraternity from government to investors to operators to consultants. When I say consultants, meaning your designers, your MEP or whatever. it brings the entire fraternity together in one platform. I don't know of any other platform than AHIF that brings the entire fraternity together under one roof. And it's very, very important to do that, because as I always say, that our hospitality fraternity is quite small when you talk about other fraternities around the world. And information sharing, experience sharing is very, very important for us to grow, because hospitality, we are all interlinked. We cannot survive without the other. And if we are getting a platform like this, where we can, and me too, I learned from so many people and so many platforms, panel sessions out there, and my growth strategy, by the way, sometimes is also evolves basis of attending these conferences, because I get to know where the movers and shakers are, where the operators are looking at in terms of their strategy, where investors are, where there is there is an increase in revenues, or the inflow of tourism, or the governance, because this is the only way us as investors will be able to get an insight to the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, fantastic.
So I really urge anyone who is listening to this, in fact, anyone I talk to as well, that this is a brilliant platform to know about the market well, and not only through your AHIF, but also other platforms that you do from your future hotels, which you're doing in Riyadh. That's another platform. So like this, I mean, you are one of the very few prominent platforms which promote as well as bring the whole sector together, and that's very, very critical in today's day and age. Information flow and networking is the key to anything, and it can make the whole world move.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you for that, Rahul, and thank you for your time today and the catch up. It's amazing to sort of see the stuff you guys get into, and how and especially obviously in the wonderful world of hospitality and so on. So thanks for your time today, and if I don't see you beforehand, I'll see you in Namibia in a few months.
No, thank you so much, Matt. Truly, truly appreciate it again. I hope that you and everyone listening to this finds it interesting, as I have found interesting, engaging and talking to you as always. I look forward to seeing you soon, my friend. If not in the near future, then for sure in Namibia.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. For more information, visit our website at www.ahif.com.